patient was on the verge of dying, and the next morning she was eating pancakes. This seems nothing short of a miracle. I have never witnessed something like this before, and maybe never will again. I don't know. This patient was on the verge of death, literally hours from death, and the next day was sitting awake and alert and eating breakfast at the breakfast table. There is something that I did see, or at least I think I saw, that I can't really explain, but here's what happened. I was showing up to this person's house for a late hospice admission. And truth be told, I was a little annoyed that I had to do this and I was going to work late. Until I got to the house, the ambulance was there bringing the patient from the hospital to her home, and I saw the patient. She was young, she had children in their early 20s, and she was actively dying. And actively dying means the last phase of life. She was fully unconscious. She had changes in skin color. She looked cyanotic, which means basically blue. She had the changes in breathing, which I show you guys a lot of. She had the death rattle. Again, I thought, oh wow, she might die before the end of my visit. And her children didn't seem to understand what was happening, which felt even worse. So once we got her settled inside, and I could tell she was very comfortable, so I sat down with the kids to let them know what was happening and explained why I thought their mother would die that night due to her being unconscious, the changes in breathing, her death rattle, all the things. I asked them to call family and friends if they needed more people there for support. And I basically tried to stay as long as I could at the visit, thinking she would die then. Like, I thought she was so close to death that I was trying to hang around the house so I could be there when she died to support them. By this time, I had been a hospice nurse for at least a few years, and I could really tell when someone was getting close. There's sure signs, like I said, the agonal breathing. When people are breathing very, very differently and their skin color's changing, it's pretty obvious that they're going to die. And the closer someone is to death, for me anyway, it's easier to see how close they are. So that's how close she looked. I had done this before where I sort of hung around the house knowing I think they're gonna take their last breath like any minute now. So I'm just gonna hang out so I can support the family. That was this situation. I thought for sure that was going to be happening. I was hanging out 20 minutes, then it turned 30 minutes, then 40 minutes, and she was still hanging on. So after about an hour, I was like, okay, well, I still think she's going to die soon, but it was getting really late. Like I said, it was already a late admission. So I'm like, I gotta go. So I eventually got her settled again, got the kids settled, and just said, call us when she does die. We'll come out and help you. I did reiterate that I think it's going to be tonight. So just call us when it happens. So they were out in the living room calling friends and family and just getting things prepared. So I go back in the room just to make sure she looks comfortable, and she did. She looked really comfortable. And I sort of just sat there and I was just hoping that this was going to be an okay death. It looked like it would be, but I was just worried for her kids mostly because it was very sudden and kind of last minute. So I just sort of sat there and I did get like a brief sense of something. And I left, I went home, I told the kids to call us. I sat at home that night thinking about them, wondering what was happening, did eventually go to bed. And the next morning when I woke up, I quickly checked my phone to see like, when did she die? Who went out there to see her? How were the kids? Things like that. And there were no emails from the office saying so-and-so had died. And I thought, like, what the heck? Why didn't they write an email? What happened? Who did they call? So I called the office and said, like, who went out to go see patient so-and-so? She should have died last night. And they said, no, we didn't get any calls. And I was like, what? That alone seemed impossible to me. Like, it seemed impossible that she would live through the night. When I tell you what happened next, it was like, I truly couldn't believe it. So I call the family to make sure they're okay. Son answers. He sounds happy. Oh, hey, Julie. Yeah, everything went great. I hear people laughing in the background. I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? I'm like, hey, how did everything go? Why didn't you guys call last night? And he goes, oh, Mom slept through the night and she woke up and was feeling great and said she was hungry for pancakes. So she's up eating pancakes. And I hear people laughing. And the person laughing is the daughter and the mom in the background. It was very hard to hide my shock, but I was trying to be professional. So I just said, wow, do you mind if I come over? Because I'm like, I have to see this for myself. Sure enough, I get there. She is alert and awake and living, and not just living, walked her legs, her body to a table and is eating pancakes. This is beyond anything I've ever witnessed. It was nothing that a person who was that close to death could have ever been doing. the next day, ever. Of course, my hospice brain is like, oh, this is just a crazy, crazy surge. You know, I talk about that phenomenon where people get really close to death and they have a burst of energy and then they die shortly after. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, this must be like the most crazy surge I've ever witnessed before. Bad News Bear over here comes walking in and starts educating everybody about the surge and how she might die soon afterwards. They all took that very well. They were very kind to me. But again, I was wrong. It was not the surge. And I know it wasn't the surge because she lived for another 3 months. Now that doesn't seem long to people who are not on hospice, but for someone who was so close to death, I'm talking hours from death, to be fully alert and oriented and awake and not having any symptoms for 3 months is I think a miracle. I truly think I witnessed a miracle. And she lived another 3 months very, very well, got to spend all of that time with her friends and family, and then peacefully died in her home 3 months later. The twist to the story that I didn't tell for years, I used to just only tell that part of the story. But the other part of the story is the one where right before I left the house, where I said I was looking at her and sort of like making sure she was okay before I left. And that good feeling I got was basically an image in my brain that came to me in that moment, only for a few moments, of an angel. I think it was not just a angel, I think it was her angel. Like maybe we all have guardian angels. Again, I'm not here to like say for sure. I don't know, but all I can tell you is what I witnessed and what I felt. And that night before I left, I did feel like I witnessed and saw in my mind's eye this large angel standing over her bed. It's really hard to describe because I tried to actually Google images to see if I could get something close to it, and I can't, because it's not like the angels we would typically think of an angel being. It was like so first off, it was very, very tall as the ceiling, if not like higher than the ceiling, and super wide and super like thick and strong, almost like a massive like statue. There wasn't really features. It gave me a sense that it had wings, but they were tucked behind. It wasn't warm and fuzzy. It didn't give me a feeling of like love. It gave me a feeling of like power. It felt like, this is mine. I've got this. It gave me a sense that like it acknowledged I was there and actually showed itself to me, but that I was no part of it. That none of us were any part of it. It was between the angel and the patient. And it kind of felt like, I've got her. Don't worry. Now, all of this happened in a split second. And being the skeptic that I am, I literally ignored it and acted like it didn't happen. I left that house. I didn't really think about it again until the next day when I saw her up and awake and eating pancakes. The flash came back in my mind and I was like, wow, that's what it was trying to show me, is what I felt. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. It was so new to me. It had never happened before. And I'm a nursing professional. I felt like if I told the family that, it would be crossing some kind of boundary. So I never said anything to the family about it. I never asked the patient anything about it or how she felt about, you know, coming back. I did tell them I thought I witnessed a miracle, that it was a miracle that she was sitting there. And they didn't really get into it. She didn't really get into it. She just lived her life the best she could for the rest of those 3 months. I'm not sure if there's any real need or reason for me to try to figure it out. I just like to acknowledge that I believe it happened and I know what I witnessed, and then share it with all of you. Some things are just maybe unexplainable.